The village of Addingham was noted for its textile industry, but that had completely vanished by 1980. Now it's a commuter town. However, there's much to remind us of its past. This building on Main Street was once a cloth hall for the buying and selling of cloth by handloom weavers. Just across the road, you'll find these unusual cottages known as the Rookery, that has a loom shop across the entire first floor. This marked the watershed from when weavers worked from their own homes to large mills built at the onset of the Industrial Revolution in the late 18th century. Addingham's mills were at the forefront of the Industrial Revolution. Samuel Cunliffe Lister, who lived here, discovered how to spin combed silk for velvets and carpets. The church, adjacent to the river and on the edge of the village, stands on an Iron Age earthwork, and 80 Viking Age graves have been found on the site of the church hall. When the Vikings invaded in AD 867, the then Archbishop of York, Wharfe, took refuge in Addingham. The preaching cross in the church dates back to that time. Although the church has been rebuilt many times, the north aisle wall and windows are the oldest, possibly pre-1066. It has a wealth of fascinating features. A rare Georgian balcony, and if you look above you in the nave, you can see grotesque carved faces on the Tudor crossbeams. Addingham was connected to Ilkley by a Roman road known as the Street, which you can follow in part today. The garrison built at Ilkley met at a crossroads and stood on the level platform where the church and manor house museum are today. It covered a larger area, and there are signs to show where its gates were. Ilkley, or Olliecarna as it was then known, was inhabited by the Romans from about AD 80 to AD 400. In the museum in the old manor house, you'll find Roman graves as well as everyday items, like this Samian ware bowl, as well as Roman coins dating from AD 70. It also has items that tell the story of the town from prehistory up to Victorian times. The parish church next door has 3 preaching crosses on display. They date from between the 8th and 10th centuries. Originally they would have been brightly coloured. Also look for the tomb of Adam Middleton, who died around 1320. Ilkley is a lively town with a wide range of shops and cafes. It hosts an annual literature festival in October, with well-known international and local authors reading excerpts from and talking about their books. The Ilkley Carnival on the May Bank holiday attracts over 20,000 people to see the floats, bands, the fair and events in the arena. Opposite is the Lido that opened in 1924, with the tennis courts and putting green. It's very popular, as long as the weather is sunny. Above the town centre on the moor, you can see White Wells. The baths were developed in 1791 for their recuperative qualities. I'm not too sure if this man agrees. Having a dip on New Year's Day has become an annual ritual, even though the water is around 6 degrees. Too cold for some to last more than a few seconds. The baths were basic, but water treatment cures were coming into vogue, and hydros built in Victorian times made Ilkley famous. There are many things to see on the moor, but you'll need the best part of the day to have a look. The most obvious starting point is the car park by the Cow and Calf Rocks. Legend has it that a giant called Rombald had an argument with his wife, and as he strode away he broke the calf from the cow. In fact, the calf is split from the cow by a natural fault in the rock. Carry on walking up the moor to find cup and ring stones. The hanging stones carvings are the nearest to the cow and calf, although they were nearly lost to quarrying. There are over 300 cup and ring stones, and none of them are identical. They're all scheduled ancient monuments, and you can be imprisoned for defacing them. They were made by using simple instruments, such as stone or antler, to gorge and smooth the stone. They are thought to have been carved during a 1500-year period to 800 BC. This is the Badger Stone, the one nearest to the summit of the moor. It has the most markings on it, 95 cups, 5 with 2 rings and 14 with 1, as well as many other markings. The most remarkable is the swastika stone, and it's protected by railings. Although we now associate the swastika with the Nazi regime, in fact it was a symbol for good fortune. Also on the moor are 3, possibly 4 stone circles. The most well-known is the 12 Apostles. It's 58 feet in diameter and, not surprisingly, has 12 stones around it. It may have been used for pagan rituals, as it's aligned with both the summer and winter solstices. Or it may have been a neutral meeting point for tribes. It was on a Whitsuntide walk across the moor that Methodists from Sowerby Bridge composed the internationally known anthem of Yorkshire folk, On Ilkley Moor Bartat. It's a song about courtship during Victorian times, when many marriage partners were found on these annual walks organised by churches and chapels. Bartat means without a hat, as in those days almost everybody wore a hat, especially out walking on these wild windswept moors where you could literally catch your death of cold. Directly across the valley is this unusual feature, Cavalry, the 12 Stations of the Cross. It was erected as a place of peace and prayer in the 1850s by the Middleton family, who were lords of the manor from the time of the Domesday Book until the 1890s. During the English Civil War that began in 1642, the Middletons were royalists and supported King Charles I. The Fairfaxes, who lived at neighbouring Denton Hall, were parliamentarians who were ultimately victorious in 1645 due to their commander, Thomas Black Tom Fairfax, who was born here in 1612. The original hall burnt down and was rebuilt by the renowned York architect John Carr in 1778. It was laid out in 260 acres of parkland, with a lake in front. It can't be visited, but can be seen from the minor road that runs from Ilkley to Otley. The main road from Ilkley leads to the former textile village of Burley in Wharfedale. The bypass now severs Greenholme Mill from the village itself. No cloth is manufactured here today, and it's divided up into light industrial units. One of the original owners of the mill, William Forster, became an MP and sponsored the Elementary Education Act of 1870 that paved the way for free education for all. You can cross the wharf here by stepping stones to the hamlets of Asquith and Weston. Both were built as estate villages to Weston Hall. The hall can't be visited, but the tiny church can. It's like stepping back in time. The church was built in the 11th century and extended in the 14th century. Thankfully, the Victorians didn't get to renovate it, and there have been no alterations since 1686. The buttress shores up these modern additions. Inside there are a number of unique features. A squire's parlour that includes a fireplace to keep the family warm. A three-decker pulpit and pine and oak box pews. One has been enlarged and holds a table so that musicians can sit around it to play. Either road from Burley in Wharfedale or Weston leads to Otley, our final destination. It's dominated by the 927-foot ridge of the Chevin. It's managed by Leeds City Council as a wildlife habitat and has a wide range of flora, some of it edible. Bilberry picking probably goes back to when man first arrived here. There are many paths and trails here from which you can see the valley we've travelled and also look down on this pretty market town. Unlike the other towns and villages we've visited, this still holds markets in the market square and surrounding streets on Tuesdays, Fridays and Saturdays. Markets have legally been held here since 1222. This unusual covered building in the market square is the Buttercross. It was built for farmers to sell dairy produce such as cheese, milk and eggs, a custom that lasted until the 1930s. The clock was built in 1888 to mark Queen Victoria's accession to the throne in 1837. Besides the weekly markets, on the last Sunday of every month, a farmers' market is held, where local farmers bring their own produce to sell. It's not the only place in town that farmers come to buy and sell. The Wharfedale Farmers Auction Mart, wholly owned by local farmers and butchers, has been auctioning sheep and cattle since 1893. The auctions take place on a Monday and a Friday, and up to 2,000 sheep can be sold at the height of the season in the spring and autumn. There's fierce bidding by local butchers. The auctioneer has to be eagle-eyed to watch for the hand movements of the bidders. We may have visited the largest agricultural show in the valley at Kilnsea, but Otley has the oldest show in the whole of Britain, which has been run by the Wharfedale Agricultural Society since 1806. It's also the first show held every year in May. The showing of livestock is still very central to the show, which also includes rural crafts such as dry stone walling, farriery, as well as horse jumping
Jumping at the moment, number 375.
and poultry shows. Otley has other claims to fame. It was here in 1718 that furniture maker Thomas Chippendale was born. He's commemorated with the statue outside the manor house. The history of Otley is told through a wide range of exhibits at the local museum that's housed in the Mechanics Institute. It includes many artefacts from prehistory up until the recent past, with displays of clocks and the printing industry that once dominated the town. Another industry that started in Otley during the 1720s and still survives to this day is paper making. Although you can't visit Garnett's paper mill, what you see here is the pulp, which at this point is 99% water to 1% wood pulp, being spread onto the forming board, a continuous fabric belt where suction is used to draw the water off, and within seconds the pulp starts to look like paper. The water used comes from the river, and any excess is cleaned and recycled. Close to the medieval bridge that crosses the Wharfe can be seen the few scant ruins of an archbishop's palace. In 937, the Archbishop of York was granted the manor of Otley by the first king of all England, Athelstan, as a thanks for defeating invading Vikings. Otley became a religious centre with its own church. The original wooden church was rebuilt in stone in the early 12th century. The original Norman nave has now become the chancel. 3 Anglo-Saxon preaching crosses can also be seen. These crosses would originally have stood at the centre of the village. The oldest is the Angel Cross and is thought to date from 750. At Easter, since 1968, a cross has been erected directly above the town on the Chevin. The town likes to celebrate all year round. In the spring, the local Buttercross bells dance around the maypole. A carnival is held in June with local schools producing dazzling displays as they wind around the streets. Which is also the backdrop for the cycle races that see the whole town centre stop to traffic, as does the start of the annual 10-mile road race. It doesn't stop there either. In early September you can see the vintage transport extravaganza that attracts over 200 vehicles, including steam engines both large and small, as well as motorbikes and lorries. Later that month, international and local acts appear in concert, with many informal sing-alongs in local pubs as part of the weekend-long Otley Folk Festival. More interest is created at Christmas with the Victorian Fair, which has become an annual event since 1985. It attracts people from all over to come shopping and to see the shopkeepers dressed in Victorian clothing and enjoy traditional children's rides and street entertainment. To see in the new year, a few brave souls take a dip in the icy waters of the Wharfe. So, we began with water, and we end with water. Still the lifeblood of those who live and work along its banks. The story is far from over, as from here, the Wharfe snakes its way onto the market towns of Wetherby and Tadcaster before joining that other Great Yorkshire river, the Ouse.
Happy New Year! Happy New Year to you!